Welcome to the second session of our two-part series on exploring the dashboard in Antero. I am Shane at Technical Support, and I will be conducting this webinar today. Allmax wants to thank everyone for their participation. We have several attendees, so because of this, everybody has been signed in on mute status. In the event you have any questions, please type them into the chat window. I am here to answer your questions, so as we go through the webinar, if you have questions, please ask them. If you'd like me to show you something pertaining to the Antero dashboard, feel free to ask. We can do that during this last webinar session. Now, keep in mind, we are conducting this webinar online, so if any internet-related delays or interruptions occur, this is not going to affect the recording you'll receive. Everyone will be receiving a recording of both sessions, so don't worry if you get pulled away from your computer or miss anything during a particular section of the webinar. So today what we're going to go over in our last webinar session is defining the properties of our container pages. We're going to be looking at creating meter and gauge pages, working with open and forecast calendars, and applying dashboards for multiple users. So most of today we'll be building a dashboard from scratch, and I'll be showing you some of the ideal ways that you can incorporate the features of dashboard for your facility. Now, last time, just to review, we went over the purpose and scope of dashboard, how we created our views and pages, our types of container pages, and applying security to dashboards. I just want to review briefly our container types so we can refresh what we went over last time. So we do have 4 different container types that we can build. Keep in mind we have our data container here, which is going to be summarized results of open or closed work orders. You have your gauge container here, which is going to be the type of container that will allow you to display your gauge and meter readings inside Antero. And then you have a graph container, which essentially will chart out data for meter or gauge, so that can be charted out in graphematical form. And then our last container page container that we can add to our page is our navigation container, where we can add different links to folders and files on our computer. So what I want to do today is I want to go ahead and start from scratch how you might approach building a dashboard. And we can see all the different features and how we define the properties for those features as we go along today and we create our dashboard from scratch. So initially, we're going to go to our dashboard tab inside Antero, and we're going to go to create new, and that's going to create a new dashboard for us. So we'll go ahead and create new. The program's going to bring up a blank container page, and that's going to start us off on the process of building our dashboard. So like we discussed in the last webinar, one of the first things I might do is I might go into my options icon here, and I might start selecting a background image for my dashboard or a color. If you didn't want to put an image in there, you could select a color. But if you have any images out on your desktop, you can always grab those. These are images that you can take from your phone and put on your computer. If you have a city logo, if you have an aerial view of your facility, any of that information can be grabbed from your desktop, and then it can be applied as an image in your background. So I'm just going to select a wallpaper here, and we'll click open on that. Once you define the image in your background, you can decide how that image is centered. So you can center it on the page, you can fit it to the page, or you can put it in the top left corner. I'm going to go ahead and fit this to the entire page. And then once I do that and save that, you'll see that now we have an image for our background. Once I've done that, I'm going to start thinking about how I want to lay out my dashboard. So initially here we have a beginning container page. So in this particular example, I might rename this page. And this particular page is going to show me my work order containers. So I'm going to go ahead and make this just sort of a standard work order page. And I'll just call it like work order status. And I'll click OK there, and then it'll rename that tab. So on our first page, what I want to do is I want to add some container. I want to add a data container. For this particular selection, I'll select data container from add the containers from the drop down. And I'm going to add multiple data containers. So I'm going to add not just one, but I'll go back to our add container icon, and I'm going to add a few of them so I can show you the different options in them. When you add the same container type, they will stack on top of each other. So do not think they're not being created. They are. You will need to drag them around your screen. Okay, and you can see that this sort of falls off our screen a little bit. One of the nice things is if we go to our upside down triangle, we can define our options for any containers that we add to our pages. In this case, I'm gonna reduce the size of these work order summary data containers. So I'm going to make them a little smaller so I can fit 4 of them in our view for this webinar. So I'll make that one small, and then I'll go here, I'll go to our size options here for window size, and I'll make that one small, and I can put those side by side. Keep in mind you have several options when it comes to sizing, so you can go through and try all of these. You can do a medium, a large. Medium to large is what it creates by default. You can also do a tall rectangular style if you want to display more data. That's nice if you're looking at a particular piece of equipment or something and you want to display a lot of data for that. You can also do a wide rectangle. So you can play around with these to get the size and scope of what you'd like to lay out on your page. I'm going to go back to small, okay? So I basically have 4 data containers that I created on our work order status page. What I want to do then is keep in mind for our work order summary data containers, these are provided to summarize the results of open work orders and work order history data. So that's what these data containers are intended for. What I can do from my options button here is I can go into our options and I can decide what kind of data is going to be displayed in each of these data containers. So in my first data container here, I can either choose whether I want to display open work orders or if I want to display my work order history. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and display open work orders. And then from my open work order display option, I can select what type of how I'm going to display those open work orders. So I can display by work order type, by work order priority. If you do use the priorities inside Antero and you have high priority work orders, you could filter a container page just by work order priority. So if I select that, I'll click OK. Now you'll see I don't really define my work order priorities, so most of those are undefined. I do have some medium defined work order priorities here. So the better you define these options, of course, the more data you will see displayed. I can also do by reason, by status, department assigned to, labor class assigned to, employee assigned to. I can do it just by employee, so that would be the employee that created it, labor class, or by delinquency. So in this first one, I'm going to go ahead and assign it by status. So I'll select my open work order, go by status, I'll click OK, and that's going to just show me how many open work orders I have. So right now I have 41 open work orders that you can see displayed inside here. I also have the option, when I go back to my options here, to display some additional information besides just the status. I can display percent columns. I can also display any summary information. And then you can include data comparisons from the previous year or the previous period, just depending on how you want to define that. Keep in mind up here we can change what time horizon is displayed. So if I were to do a comparison from previous period, as I flip through my different display date ranges, it would bring up the previous year's data as well. So I'm going to click OK on that. And you can see that it will show me the count. Right now I have 41 open work orders, which is 100%. I do have 4 of those work orders which are delinquent, so that means about 10% of my work orders are currently off schedule. This will show me what kind of data I had for that previous month that's defined here. So you can see that for the same time or the previous month last year, I can see that this was what my data displayed. I can also change my display range. Again, you can do this inside any of these containers. You'll be able to filter out, and if I want to go back to 90 days, I can do that, or I can even choose a current year, so it'll start displaying data for the current year, or I can customize it by selecting my beginning and end range. So all of that can be displayed there, but I'm just going to go ahead and display the current month's data. And then I can go to this next work order summary container. And since I'm already displaying all my open work orders, one of the things I might want to display is my open work order by delinquent status. So if I have any delinquencies, I want to be able to see those right away. And if I want, I can include comparison data for the previous year. So you can see right now of the 41 work orders I have, which this tells me here that 4 of the work orders is delinquent, and this tells me right here that 4 of the work orders are delinquent. Since this is a sample database, I don't have a lot of previous year data, but if I had previous year, it would break that down for me as well. And I can change that to do the current month as well right here. And then I would have the option inside these larger containers. I can then go back into my options field, and maybe I want to start looking at some work order history. So if I want to look at my work order history, I could look at any work orders that were done by work order type, work order priority, by reason, any of the, if you want to filter them by departments, if you have multiple departments, you can select all of those options just to display that information. So I can see for the previous 7 days, I had 1 corrective, 3 scheduled. So I can start to display data. Also keep in mind for your work order history, you can also include comparison data for a previous period or a previous year and have a comparison that can come up inside these containers. And then you could also, for your last data container, you could go into your options menu, and if you wanted to see work order summary, and if you just wanted to see that, you could display that by reason or by employee. So I'm going to do by assigned to employees so you can see that. So if you did have work orders that were assigned to employees, that would populate there. You also have the option to go back in here and you can start to display data by labor class, or by delinquency as well for your work order summary. So you could see that. So all of that will display there in our work order status. So when you bring up your dashboard, it does give you some data containers where you can immediately see the status of what's going on with your work order summary and your work order history here. In addition to that, what we would want to do next for our dashboard is add an additional page if we want to display additional data. So I would go up here to add page. I can add another container page. I can go to that container page. Again, I can go in my options. I can define my background for that container page. Or if I want, I can just choose a color background. And then inside that data container page, I can start to build additional data containers. So what I want to do is I want to rename this page, and I'm going to rename this a meter and gauge page so I can display my meter and gauge information. So I'm going to go again to my drop down for add container, and I'm going to add multiple gauge containers here. So add about 4 of those. Spread those out. Again, you have the ability from the option button to resize these windows, so you can resize those however you'd like. And then I'm going to start to go through and define the properties for these particular containers. So I'm going to select my meter or gauge. It will bring up a list of all the meters and gauges that you have available. Keep in mind, just like you do in the Allmax grid for your work orders, you can filter by department, or you can choose all to display all the information for all your departments in your database. So I'm going to go ahead and start selecting equipment to display data for. So as I select my equipment, it will tell me what my equipment is up here. It will let me select the type of gauge I want to display, so you can change those, and then it'll let me select what time frame for that gauge, which for some gauge readings that's not going to change a whole lot, but it just depends. And it will also, as I select different date ranges, it will allow me to see my minimum, average, and max value for the date range I select. And then I can go in here and I can do the same thing for my second truck here. I can display a gauge and I can just do that for the current month. And again, it'll show me my minimum, my average, and my max. Do keep in mind, if you want to know what piece of equipment it's referencing, that information is right up here at the top. And then you can go in and you can do that for additional meters and gauges that you want to be able to see a reading for. And I'll select a last one here. Go down here and do an hour meter. And you can see as you make those larger, the data is easier to see. Of course, it'll enlarge that for us. So now that I've created a work order status page and I have a meter and gauge page, and keep in mind you can combine these two if I didn't want to create two separate tabs and I only really needed to see my open work order count here, which also conveniently shows my delinquent status. I could just create that, get rid of these, and add the meter, a couple meters and gauges that I want to keep track of if you want to create all that on one page. But I just want to show you the potential for how you can build out your dashboard. And then at the end, we'll do something to where we can customize it per user. So the next thing we'll want to do after we build those is if you wanted to build any additional data containers, you could do that. The other data containers we have available are graph. Now our graph containers, keep in mind those just display a graphmatical form of your meters and gauges. So as I select those, this is my F-150 right here, I can select OK for that. And then when I go back and I show my time horizon, it'll show me my incremental values for my meters and gauges. This may be more useful in a setting where you have something like an amp meter that's going to go up and down in value. So if we wanted, we could go back to add our container page, and I could also put a graph container right under this gauge. So I can correlate these two since we're looking at the same piece of equipment. And I go in here and I have an amp meter right here and click OK. And you can also change the display values, how those are displayed as far as what chart type you'd like to select. Once you've done all that and you've selected your data containers, the only other data container left would be our navigation container. Again, I'll briefly go over that. We did discuss that last time. But if I had a navigation container and I wanted to create links, for example, if I wanted to navigate out on my desktop and I wanted to grab files and attach them here, I can do that. And then when I double click on this extension, it's going to launch this file right here and bring that right up. And of course, it launched that on my second screen that you can't necessarily see. But one of the nice things is I have seen people set these up where they'll add all the PDF files for their manuals, for their operations manuals or whatnot, and they might put that on a meter and gauge page. So if they're looking at a particular piece of equipment, they can click on a reference document that is in regards to that equipment. So that can be a useful feature there. And then lastly, you also have the ability to create hotspots. So hotspots are created by holding down the left button of your mouse, dragging it. You'll see a box appear up here in the corner. Once I let go of that box, it's going to allow me to create my hotspot. These hotspots do the same thing that the navigation container does. It allows you to navigate out to an external document on your computer network. You can put in a description for that. And once you do that, you can also go in, and if you wanted to find an image for that hotspot, you'll go in there and then it'll start loading the Antero image directory. And from the Antero image directory, you can then go in and select an image that you might use to define your particular hotspot. This image directory has about 500 images in it, so it does take it a minute to load all of those inside Antero. But once you do that, you can go through, you can see you have a multitude of images you can select. We'll go with Captain America shield here. And you can also make those images as small or as large as you'd like. And then once you click OK, you'll see that image appears there. So you essentially have a clickable link to whatever documents you want to attach to it. You can also right-click on any existing hotspots, and you can edit what they reference. So if I wanted to keep this existing hotspot, but I wanted to change the name of it, and I wanted to redirect it to another document, I could do that without having to recreate it from scratch. So the next thing you'll do inside your dashboard is most likely build some calendar pages. So you'll notice that all our containers are defined here, and those have to be added when we create a container page. So the first step, you have to create a container page. Second step, you can right-click and rename that container page. And then the third step is to decide what kind of container, data containers you want to attach to your container page. So we've done meter and gauge, we've done some work order status, we did some graph containers, we did our navigation container, and we did a hotspot. The next thing I want to do is I want to start adding calendar pages. So you can see the useful ways those can be applied inside a dashboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply an open calendar page. So once I do that, it will tell me I have an open work order calendar page here. And this is going to show me all my work orders that are currently open for the month. And you can see I have 41, just like under our work order status, I have 41 open work orders. So from your calendar, there's a lot of options that you can employ that will help you manage your work orders. The first one that I really want to point out that I think is useful is if you have a work order, an open work order that appears on your calendar, and it's in red, that means it's delinquent. So if you wanted to, you could right-click and immediately go to that delinquent work order. So that's going to bring open your open work order status. You'll be able to see the date scheduled. You'll be able to see, review any notes attached to that, and determine why that work order is still delinquent. The other nice feature that you have available in your calendar is if you have a work order that just needs more time, you can click on that and you can drag it to a future date, and it will no longer be delinquent. It will update it. So I'm going to drag these two red work orders to the 27th, which is tomorrow. And if I refresh my calendar, you'll see they go from red to green. The nice thing about that is it'll give you more time on your calendar, so you're not always looking at red delinquent work orders if you know you've got to push out the date. The other nice feature is it will modify the delinquent date, but it won't change anything that's associated with the template, the date scheduled, or any of that information. It simply modifies it for delinquency status only, so it will help push out the date due for that particular work order without modifying any of the underlying information that has been set up with it. And you can do that for any individual work order. You can just drag and move them around as well. The other nice feature is you can right-click and go to any open work orders from here. And you also have the ability, again, to filter by your particular view. So right now we're looking at a month view. We can do a 7-day view. The nice thing about a 7-day view is I can start to see more information about my work order for the week. I can not only see the work order number, but now I can see what template it's associated with, what department it's assigned to, if it's assigned to a particular employee, what piece of equipment, what kind of equipment description, priority, task. All of that information is now able to be scrolled through. So you can start to get more data as you filter down from a month view to a week view. And then you can even go smaller if you want to go to a day view. You could go to an individual day view, and then it's just going to show basically all the information you see in the week view. It's just going to spread it out so you don't have to scroll over as far. So it's just a matter of preference of which one you prefer. You also have the ability, if we go back to our calendar, to select an item. If you don't want to drag it, which I think is the easier method, you can also select an icon to move it to a new date. And that's nice if you're going to drag it to a future date in the next month. So say I want to push this out to August 1st, I can click on this icon after I've highlighted my work order and click OK, and it'll push that out to August 1st on my calendar. Another nice feature in Antero is you have the ability to print off this calendar. So you can select to print your current calendar view, or you can do the previous current view. One of the features that is currently not working in 6.14 is the ability to print work orders directly from your calendar. We have fixed that for 6.15, and that release is actually going to be coming out here in a couple weeks. We finalized everything with that. It's not a major update. It does refresh some of the icons, and it fixes any known issues that we had in the previous version. But once that version's available for you to upload and update your software, you will be able to print out all of your work orders right from your calendar. So you'll be able to select the work orders that you want from your calendar. You can hold down your control button, and then you'll have the ability to print those off in either list, general, or detail from your calendar. You can also refresh, so like when we drag this item that's delinquent, I can get a hold of it here, and I drag it to the 28th, and I want to turn it to green now. You will have to refresh your calendar for it to do that. And then we discussed last time our filter options here. So what I want to do is I want to create the first open calendar page, and I'm going to always set this to display any data for my previous month. So you can see I have a lot of open work orders here in the database. So if I'm looking at my previous open work order month, I'm just going to go ahead and rename this page, and I'm just going to put previous in front of this. That way I know that I'm looking at the previous month in this particular calendar. And then what I can do up here is I can add another open work order calendar to display data for my current month. So I can flip back and forth without having to navigate in the calendar if I want to do that, if I'm trying to organize my workflow here and see how to get these work orders processed. It's a little faster sometimes to create a second calendar. Another nice feature is we can also add our forecast calendar. So we'll add a work forecast calendar here. And that forecast calendar is only going to show future scheduled work orders based on our templates. Now keep in mind, when it does show your scheduled template in the work forecast calendar page, it does not necessarily show all of the work orders that will be created associated with that template. It'll show that I have multiple pieces of equipment, but when you if you try to count the number of template displayed forecasts that you see on your calendar with the actual number of work orders being created, that's not entirely accurate, because depending on the amount of equipment you have attached to your template, when you process one template, it could actually end up creating 10 or 15 or 20 work orders if you have that many equipment task combinations in that particular template. But the nice thing is, from your forecast calendar, is you can select here and select to go to your template. So that will allow you to go to your monthly template. It'll bring up your template list. You can click OK. It's going to open up your template. You can see for this monthly maintenance schedule template, I have lots of equipment that are scheduled for monthly maintenance, all on the same schedule create date. So I can see that I have these all scheduled by calendar, and they're scheduled to appear every month, the first week of every month on a Monday. So when this template does get created as open work orders, it's going to create several work orders inside this one template. And with your forecast calendar, you can also filter from a month view to a day view. And that again, or a week view, I'm sorry, that again will display a lot more information about your template. And you can also go to a daily view as well. And you have your filter options here. So if you're looking for a particular task, so if I'm looking, just want to see what my monthly lift station inspections are, I can click that. I can apply filters. I don't have any scheduled templates by that. if I have any tasks that are scheduled for the month, when I apply my filter, it will show only those tasks that are scheduled for that month. So I can always filter to clean up my calendar and see the data that I need to see right away. You could also create a work forecast calendar for the following calendar year if you wanted to see really far out into the future. So if you wanted, you could add an additional page, add an additional workcast calendar, and I can click on that. I can right click on that. I can name that, and I can put this out for 2018. So this could be a 2018 work forecast calendar. And then what I would do is I would go to my calendar options and just look at my next year and start from there. And then I can start to see what I have scheduled for the following calendar year, especially if you want to get just a general idea of how busy you'll be for the following year. So you can have multiple calendar pages open to help you filter through your data. And then the other option that I want to look at here is the ability to create work orders for your specific employees. So this is a way for your employees to be able to manage their workflow. One of the things we'll look at towards the end of the webinar is how we can take our master calendar view and design it for our individual employees. So one of the things I would do is I would start creating open work order calendars for each employee. And then what I do is I go to my open work order calendar, and then I will filter by the assigned employee. So we'll go ahead and select Dave. I'll apply my filter. And then once I do that, I can rename my page. I can just call it Dave for my open work order page. And then I can go again and I can create another open work order calendar. I would go to my filters here, look at my assigned employees, apply my filter, and then rename this accordingly. I could say John, or actually, yeah, if I want to be more specific, I could say John's calendar or John's work orders. You can really name these whatever you'd like. And then I can do this for another employee. So we'll select another employee here. And then I'm going to rename this page. Just rename it Steve. I'll just call this Steve's work orders. Okay. So the nice thing is if you create this for your own overview, you can immediately tab and see what each of your employees has scheduled in their open work order calendar. And you can also keep status of the progress of as the work orders, as they get closed, they'll disappear from the calendar. You'll also see that it will show you down here at the bottom some nice data, like, for example, we know Steve has 9 open work orders that were scheduled for July 1st, July 7th. They're still open. We're getting towards the end of the month. If he's out on vacation or what's going on, you can always determine that. Same here. You can see that John only has 3 open work orders. Another nice thing is you can sort of start to get a better grasp of how to divvy up your work orders, if that would be appropriate, to make sure that your employees have a more equitable number of work orders, so it doesn't all fall on one guy sometimes. Now, once we've created this overview here, we then want to save it. So we've created all this data in our dashboard. So the next thing we'll do is we'll use our save icon, and we're going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to save this as our main Antero dashboard. So once I've done that, I can go to my list here, and you'll see I have my webinar dashboard that I created for our webinar session. And then we also have our main Antero dashboard that we just created from scratch. So the nice thing is if I wanted to have a main Antero dashboard for the entire facility, I could create a master dashboard like this. And then what I can do is I can go to my save icon and select Save As, and then I could just save this as Dave's dashboard. Select OK. It's going to duplicate our main dashboard, and it's going to create another one called Dave. So let's go to Dave's dashboard. So Flipping between dashboards is as easy as selecting under the binocular icon and clicking the dashboard you want. So we're going to go to Dave's dashboard. So it's going to bring up a duplicate copy of our main. What I can do is I can then start to customize this for what Dave would actually need to see. So maybe Dave doesn't need to see all of this. He doesn't need to see the work order status. So I can delete that page. I can hit yes. So it's going to get rid of that page. And maybe he does want to see this data, but he's not really too concerned about previous open work orders because that's not his job. So we can go ahead and delete that. And then we can leave a generic open work order calendar so he can see what everyone else is doing. And then maybe we create a forecast calendar just for Dave. So we'll assign it by employee, we'll select Dave, we'll apply the filter, and he can see what future work orders that are assigned to him that are coming up. But they'll be specific just to Dave, so Dave doesn't have to worry about all the other future work orders going on. And then for our 2018 work forecast calendar, he probably doesn't really care that far in advance, so we might be able to just delete that and get rid of that. And then now we have Dave's calendar. Well, maybe that's the first thing he really wants to see, is he wants to see his calendar first, so we can drag it. So if we hold down the left button of our mouse, we can drag these tabs around. So we're going to customize this so when Dave first opens his dashboard, the first thing he sees is his open work order calendar. Then we have John's calendar here. So if Dave wants to be nosy and create calendars for his other coworkers, he can do that, or he can just close these out. And maybe he doesn't care, so he can just close these out and get rid of that. Maybe there's a scenario where Steve goes on vacation, so Dave's coming in and now he has to not only worry about completing his work orders, but he has to complete Steve's work orders as well. He could come in again and then he could just add a new page, an open work order page, filter it again by the assigned employee, Steve, and then he could go ahead and apply that filter. And then since this is only going to be a temporary calendar, he doesn't have to necessarily change the name of it if he doesn't want to, but he can flip back and forth and he can see, Steve's work orders that he's going to be helping out with while Steve's on vacation. And then he has his here as well. And then when Steve comes back, if he wants to just get rid of that, he can delete that. So once Dave's customized his calendar view or his dashboard view for all the specific pieces of data that he needs to see on a daily basis to complete his job, he can then save that. So he's going to be able to save this view. So this is already a view that we've saved as Dave's dashboard. So I'll select Save View. And now when we go back to the main Antero dashboard, we have all the master data that we've created. And then we can, when whoever logs into the program, they can select whichever dashboard would be more appropriate to them. So once they've done that, it's a matter of just customizing it now for their particular view. And then also the nice thing here is if this particular individual, in this case Dave, had additional documents he wanted to link out to, we could add another container page. We could rename that to docs, and then he could begin to create a backdrop and then hotspots for any reference documents that are specific to Dave, whether it's a time card, whether it's a maintenance manual, any of that can all be stored inside your database or from your network from a shared file location, and it'll be accessible through links that can be created here in your dashboard, just like we did with our master dashboard here. And then it'll always ask you if you make any changes to a current dashboard. It will always ask if you want to save those changes. And we can go back to the master main Antero dashboard that we created. So once you've done that, that would be a generally good overview of the process that it would take to start building your Antero dashboards. It is usually nice to have one user sit down and build a main dashboard for the facility, and then individual employees can copy from that dashboard and customize it to their particular job and whatever particular task they need to perform inside Antero. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if someone were to go in and they were to pull up an open list of any of your current dashboards and they were to delete those are gone forever. So if you do have any employees that are prone to deleting, as we discussed last time, you can use your user security window inside the database to select your particular individual. So if you have multiple users, you would have a list of them here. You would highlight that user, and then you have the ability under dashboard to allow them a no save option. So if they select the no save option, they won't be able to, they'll still be able to bring up dashboards, they'll still be able to view all the data in dashboards and access all the data. They just won't be able to make any changes to an existing dashboard. This is something that you want to keep in mind if that's a concern. And that's pretty much going to conclude this Antero dashboard webinar series. So we wanted to walk you through the process of using dashboard and show you the features that are available to you when you decide to use dashboard. Keep in mind, if you guys have any questions, you can type those in the chat window. But dashboard is really designed to allow employees to customize their individual views. The other thing I do want to show you briefly is, if you remember from the last webinar, if we go to our File tab and we go under Options, we have the ability to tell the program that when it opens, so when you launch Antero, you can select it to display a default dashboard, um, um, so it will launch directly to that dashboard. So you can see we add Dave's dashboard here. So I can click that, I can save that. So the next time I launch the program, so if I were to exit out of the program, and then we go ahead and we relaunch it, it's going to open up and it's going to immediately display Dave's open work order calendar. So that is a feature that's available in the software. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's under the File tab. It's under Options. Also, you have the ability under this Options, just for your information, to change your theme inside Antero. So if you don't like the blue layout, you can play around with these and modify them to whatever you'd like. But that will conclude our webinar. I want to thank everyone for participating. I'll go ahead and leave this session open in case you guys have any questions. And we'll be sending out videos or links to videos here shortly in the next week or two. So you guys will have a copy of that, and you can share those on your network, and anybody, when they have downtime, if they just want to get some information on how to use Dashboard, they can just go back and watch the video and see all the demonstrations that we did in our last two webinar sessions. So my name is Shane with Allnex Software, and I want to thank everyone for participating, and I hope you guys have a great day.